right now. Pittsburgh's best sports show is about to begin. Call us or tweet us. We've got things to talk about on the Ireland Contracting Nightly Sports Call.
Thanks a lot, Jess, and thank you for sticking around for the Ireland Contracting Nightly Sports Call. Rich Walsh will be joined by Chris Mueller in a matter of moments over to 93.7 The Fan Cam. We're going to be talking about the Steelers draft and much more here tonight. 412-575-2600. Get on the phone lines right now. Chris, I remember doing the show with you last year, the day before the draft, and we talked about potential draft picks, and I think we were both on the same page. I actually think you said Broderick Jones. From what I remember, you'd love to see them get him, but he would have been out of reach. Well, the Steelers somehow got him. What are you thinking this year? Let's just get this thing started. I think it's going to be a tackle. That's my prediction.
So I was dead set that they were going to get Jones last year, and I think I said I had gotten a little birdie had gotten into my ear saying they were going to get Jones, and they were pretty sure they could get Porter at 32 because their analysis suggested that he was going to fall out of the first, and obviously they had to make a little move to get Jones, but I was very pleased, Richie, with that result last year. And I had confidence, too, that Jones was their guy last year as well. That was the other thing. This year it is, admittedly, despite my efforts to kind of get an inside sort of sense of what they're thinking, and I'm sure you've done the same, it's a much murkier picture. What I think they are going to do, just gut feeling based on what I've been hearing most recently, is draft Graham Barton from Duke. And they'll play him at center probably right away, but they'll also talk or something, say something to the effect of, well, he's got positional versatility. We think he could play either guard spot. We know he can play left tackle at the collegiate level. We think he could play right tackle, but they'll draft him to play center. What do I want them to do, though, Richie? You say you think it's going to be tackle?
Yeah.
I want them to take Amarius Mims. I want them to take a home run swing. Don't draft scared. Draft the guy who, if you get it right with him, is going to be maybe the best right tackle in football for the next 6 to 8 years. Here's a little trivia note, too. He's only got 8 starts in college, and that's the big thing that scares people. But if he had had 16 starts and he had looked as good as he did in his first 8, he'd be a top 5 or so pick. The last offensive lineman to start 8 or fewer games at the collegiate level and get drafted in the first round. You ready for this one, Richie?
Good.
Kyle Long, Howie's kid. Only started 6 games in college, ended up going in the first round. He had a good pro career, 3-time Pro Bowler, second-team All-Pro when he was with the Bears, but there's just not a ton of precedent for a guy with Mims' lack of experience actually going in the first round.
6'7", 340. He's huge. He has a ton of upside. I mean, I think his potential was sky high. So what I was told, the kind of scoop that I got over the last couple of days was they're focusing on tackle, center, and wide receiver early on. They did bring some of those guys in. This shifted a little bit, too, because I was hearing that they were focusing more on cornerback and defensive line, especially cornerback at the combine. And then I guess after you make some moves and you get Jackson and you trade Johnson, things change a little bit. And I'm with you with Amarius Mims. That's who I want them to draft. But there's also a couple other good ones that could fall. The kid from Washington, Troy Fontenot, he's a guy that I wouldn't mind them taking. I know Graham Barton is a guy that they looked at. He's versatile, but he's been moving up the boards lately. For me, though, I want them to swing for the home run and get Amarius Mims. That's what I think that they need. I think that he fits their offensive plan with what they're trying to do with Arthur Smith. I think he'd be a perfect fit.
Not a single pressure allowed in, I want to say the number is either 342 or 350 pass blocking snaps this year at Georgia. I mean, the guy was a wall, and he was doing it in the biggest and best conference in college football. He's also, thought of as a guy who is already kind of a ready-made run blocker, just a big, humongous individual, very nimble on his feet. They want to build a power-running offense. They want to build, I think, a reasonable facsimile of what Arthur Smith built in Tennessee. Well, they had big-time power at both tackles for those Titans teams, to say nothing of Derrick Henry. So I think you get Mims, you pair him with his college teammate Jones, his other college teammate Washington, and you've got beef up front to try to impose your will the way I think the Steelers still want to do.
And maybe, just maybe, we know how much they love Georgia guys. They go out and they get Cedric Van Pran for the second pick in the 3rd round. I wouldn't be.
Well, you know what? I'll tell you this. He's a little undersized. I think opinions on him are all over the board. A guy that paid a visit to them as one of their 30 visits that I think people should keep an eye on is this Hunter Norzad from Penn State, this center. People feel like he's a very powerfully built guy. He's not going to suffer from being so small and out of position like Kendrick Green did if you pick him. And despite the fact that most people, Richie, have him as like a late third, early fourth type of selection, those same people think that he's going to challenge for starters reps very early in his career because he's an older prospect, he's experienced, and they think he's kind of a high-ish floor, maybe a lower ceiling guy.
Yeah, that's another guy, and you never know. Jackson Powers-Johnson, Zach Frazier, one of those guys could fall and slip into the second round for the Steelers. But I do think they're going to go with the tackle early on, and then we'll see how the draft unfolds. But I think it's going to be tackle, wide receiver, and maybe center if they can get one in those first couple picks. All right, we're going to take a break. Love to hear what you guys think. 412-575-2600 is the number. Back in a couple minutes. Welcome back to the Ireland Contracting Nightly Sports Call. This is our GMC tweet of the night. You can see Paul Skeens now has 34 strikeouts in 17 innings. He's on fire. 4 1/3 today, 5 hits. He gave up 2 runs, first earned run all season. His ERA is up to .53. Pretty good. A couple more starts, and I would imagine he's going to be up here. But let's switch gears back to the draft. Chris, what if you had a chance to draft someone like Quinyon Mitchell if he fell? Or maybe a Nate Wiggins, who could potentially be there when they drafted 20. Do you even think about cornerback?
I'd think about Mitchell before I'd think about Wiggins, simply because of the seeming better fit with Mitchell, who's a bigger, more physical guy. Wiggins is this very fluid athlete in space, but doesn't like to come up and tackle, or if he does, just isn't big enough to do it well at the NFL level. And we know from Joey Porter Jr. last year, a big guy and a capable guy whose dad was a hard hitter. We know that the Steelers want their corners to be physical and run support and be willing tacklers. So I don't know if Wiggins fits. Mitchell fits, and I'm all about, Richie, with the draft, understanding positional value. I think there are 5 core positions that are most valuable in the modern NFL. Quarterback's the obvious number 1, offensive tackle, edge rusher, cornerback, and then wide receiver. I think those are your big 5. So if you were to take a guy like Mitchell, I think you'd be understanding and cognizant of, if you're Omar Khan, positional value. But I still want to build with a tackle. They have done a lot to try to spend money and help this defense and take some high picks. Benton and Porter are 2 of their first 3 picks last year. They still have holes, yes. I don't think Dante Jackson is anything great at cornerback, but I would rather see the tackle. I'd consider Mitchell. I wouldn't really consider Wiggins. I wouldn't be happy with Wiggins, but I'd still prefer a tackle.
All right, let's go out to Bert and Ross Traver. How you doing, Bert?
Okay, guys, thanks. Yeah, I understand what you're saying, but I have to disagree. I think they need to take the best interior offensive lineman they can fit in as early as possible, probably the first round, because if they don't, the quarterback won't be able to step up in the pocket and he'll be running for his life.
Bert, that's a great point. But, Omar said time and time again, and I don't know if this is a smokescreen, he's basically saying, hey, we have guys on our roster that can play center.
Well, I mean, it's probably a smokescreen. I would disagree with Bert in this way. Isaac Seumalo is their best lineman probably right now, although I think Jones is going to take that role over, or that distinction over this year. Seumalo at left guard. Daniels is a serviceable, I think a solid right guard. Cole was terrible last year. If he means just take the center, take Graham Barton, fine. I won't love that pick, but I also won't hate it. It'll be like, I'd give it like a B, because I don't think it's a super valuable position. But I would also caution people with this. If you're saying, oh, their interior line or their line in general was terrible last year, or they didn't develop linemen well enough, just remember, until the very last couple of games of the season, they were employing 2 quarterbacks, neither of whom really had any feel for the pocket or how to stay in it or how to step up. I thought that line looked collectively better. Not that I don't think they need help there, Richie, but I thought they looked better when Mason Rudolph was in there actually standing in like regular quarterbacks do.
The one thing I like about Omar Khan, he's a gambler. I think he looks to hit the home run more than Kevin Colbert did, and that's why I lean towards a Mims over a Barton kind of guy. Let's go out to Chuck in Uniontown. How you doing, Chuck?
Yeah, thanks, fellas. Good evening. If Broderick Jones is the Steelers' best offensive lineman, do you think they will put him at left tackle and keep him there to protect the blind side?
I don't think they do that this year. And just from talking to Omar and a couple guys, they're comfortable leaving him at right tackle. This will probably be Dan Moore's last year with the Steelers, so I don't think they want to mess anything up. And then they'll eventually move him to left tackle next year.
If they have Amarius Mims at 20 and they pick him, I think Amarius Mims is on the Broderick Jones plan. And the second they feel like Amarius Mims shows enough polish to be viable in game, Dan Moore heads to the bench. Broderick Jones immediately heads to left tackle, where you figure even at the NFL level, the learning curve is much quicker for him because he knows the position. It's what he's played all his life. And you play Mims at his natural position of right tackle. Richie, you know this. You've talked to me. It frustrates me to no end that they have continued to allow a mediocrity in Dan Moore because they like him personally, because he fought his way into the starting lineup. They have allowed his mediocrity to stay at left tackle while putting a better player at right tackle out of position because Moore can't play the other side. It's very backwards. It's very frustrating. As somebody that thinks Jones could blossom very quickly into a Pro Bowl caliber left tackle, watching him play out of position to support somebody else who's just not very good.
Yeah, but you don't want to rock the apple cart, right? It was their best option last year. It was the best formation of the line because if
was it though?
Over,
I don't think it was.
Right,
I don't think it was, Richie.
You would have to put.
I think Chooks would have been better.
I
know Chooks had the act of insubordination, saying something that got him benched. I think it's very simple. Chooks is a better player than Dan Moore, but they like Dan Moore personally a lot more than they like Chooks because Chooks was willing to speak up and run his mouth a little bit when he was not happy. And so I think that's why Chooks got sent to the bench, Jones got played out of position, and Moore got kept in the lineup. I would have put Jones right at left tackle. I'd have kept Chooks where he was, and I'd have gone from there.
You know who I like and who I think would fit well with the Steelers is that J.C. Latham from Alabama. I just don't think he's going to fall to the Steelers. It's kind of the same feeling I have with Broderick Jones last year.
So, Talisa Fuaga, J.C. Latham, Fautanu. I mean, the one difference for me with this year's draft versus last year in this tackle crop, I was very dead set that I just felt Jones was the clear best player in that grouping. And I think only Darnell Wright, who ended up he's a right tackle, I think he had a pretty good rookie year. But a lot of the other guys validated my thought by not being nearly as good, in my opinion, as Jones. Richie, this year I do think there are about 3 or 4 guys, mainly the ones I just named, who if the Steelers were to pick those guys, even over Amarius Mims, who I do think is the highest ceilinged player at the position, I would be fine with it because it seems like there are very legitimate first-round prospects there. If they took Latham, if that was their guy at right tackle, I'd be fine. If they took Fuaga, same deal, I'd be fine. If they took Fautanu, even with the concerns about his knee history as far as injuries go and the long-term ramifications, I think I'd still be fine with it. So it is a deeper, better crop this year for them to choose from.
Yeah, I like all 4 of those guys, too. Kirk out in Manor. How you doing, Kirk?
I'm doing this evening.
Good.
Hey, real quick, I'm just wondering, they threw their number 20 pick away 3 years ago for a quarterback. Do you think there's a chance if Michael Penix probably will be going to the Raiders is available, would they take him or Bo Nix?
I think it's Kirk. I think it's 0 chance to take a quarterback in the first round. I actually think there's no chance they take a quarterback with those first 4 picks up into the 3rd round. I just don't think quarterback's on the radar early on.
I know Mike Florio went on with us today and said he thinks they've done enough diligence on Penix that it wouldn't completely shock him if he was there at 20 and they took him. I disagree with Mike. I like Mike a lot, but I disagree. I don't think Penix ever came here for a visit. They might have done their diligence in other ways, but I do not think they will take him. The earliest I could see them taking a quarterback is if Spencer Rattler falls, which I think is unlikely, to the very end of day 2 or the very beginning of day 3, especially the very beginning of day 3. If he's somehow there in the 4th round, I could see them considering it. Failing that, I think they're much more likely to take a guy with maybe their last pick in the draft at quarterback.
Like a Jordan Travis,
Travis, I mean, here, Sam Hartman. I mean, Dan Colbert went to go see Notre Dame. I know they always send somebody to Notre Dame. Joe Milton, who can throw a ball 90 yards, but it's like me off the tee, Richie. Joe Milton can hammer the thing, but he might actually send it about 70 yards left or 70 yards right when he doesn't want to. And then Carter Bradley, the South Alabama kid.
Yeah.
But I think it's most likely that they just take a guy who's a longer-term project at the position.
You know, I would be thrilled. And, you know, I was told that wide receivers on their radar. What if they make a move to go up and get Rome Odunze if he falls out of the top 10? I would love to see something like that.
He's the only wide receiver I would do that for. If you're telling me that's this year's first and then you ultimately move up to, say, like 11 or something like that or whatever.
What would you have to give up? One of your thirds to move up?
No,
from
you'd have
20?
to give up a first. You'd have to give up, if you go from like 20 to, let's say 8,
12,
which I think is
13.
the most. 12, it becomes less, but I don't think Odunze is going to fall that far. I've seen one mock that has him at 15, and it's not from somebody I consider to be one of the more credible people. If he falls to 8, which I think is possible, and they said, we're going to take this year's 20 and next year's first and go up and get Rome Odunze, I would be okay with that because I think he's going to be the best receiver in this draft. And I think Neighbors and I think Harrison Jr. are going to be great. And I think there's other really good guys. I think Odunze is going to end up having like an all-pro level career. And so if they wanted to get a major impact guy like that, I'd be fine with it.
I would hate to give up next year's first.